Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we are bringing you first impressions, our initial expectations of Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin, the brand new standalone Tainted Grail adventure coming from Awakened Realms, coming to Game Found soon. We are doing a whole slew of content for them. I am sure I will have preview content. I already have 2 gameplays recorded. We still have to dive into the second part, the chapter 2. So we're about 4 or 5 hours into the experience so far. We have sunk our teeth in. I'm here with Kadeus. You run our Discord server. Some call him Daddy Duck. Just so you all know, put a face to that, to the rumors that are out there in the ether. Kadeus has played through the original Tainted Grail 2 full times, I believe. So, very, 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 very experienced. I have not actually finished a full campaign of the original Tainted Grail, but I absolutely adored and loved everything that it was doing. It was one of my top 10 games last year. High on my list. And West...
I've not played Tainted Grail.
Has played about 2.5 hours of Tainted Grail so far.
New Tainted Grail.
Of New Tainted Grail so far.
Which it sounds like I'm really glad I played New Tainted Grail from what I've heard about Old Tainted Grail.
We'll talk about
it.
We'll talk about it. We've got some spicy opinions here. We've got some thoughts. And of course, we're working with a prototype. So we're still balancing what we understand. This is in no way a review. This is our general and genuine expectations. And then what we've seen so far when it comes to re-dipping into this world. I'm going to have a few questions for both of you and for myself as we dig into this. But to start with, Kadeus, can you give us a 30-second rundown, a 30-second setup of Tainted Grail as a genre of game? As a what is this thing we're doing?
Oh, overall, as far as the setting and what's happening here, or mechanically what's happening?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both.
So Tainted Grail's working on the Arthurian mythology here, right? Arthur coming over. Old Tainted Grail's on one side of the island that he lands on. New Tainted Grail's on the other. There's a big divider there. Mechanically, we're going to be exploring around a map. We're going to be uncovering it as we go along, exploring different locations around the board. Some amount of resource management between food, magic, wealth, experience. Encountering enemies through an interesting and what I kind of enjoy, card combat and card diplomacy system that they have going on, and an incredibly expansive, this is just the prototype for 2 chapters worth, and we already have hundreds of pages.
With some of the best, in my opinion, some of the best writing I have ever seen in a product. In a game, in a book, in a video game. I'm saying, this is on the level of, Elden Ring style writing, scripting, world building. It's immaculate.
It's really
It's one of the things that has made me fall in love with this game. And then on top of that storytelling, and on top of that incredible depth, it actually has decisions that matter in the game. When you arrive to locations, what decisions you make, whether or not you decide to check off one box versus another, if you decide to close your ears to torture or let things, let things resolve in the most peaceful way possible, those choices, those consequences on this list over here will come back to both bless you and haunt you and probably do a little bit of each as you play. And the combination for me, set everything else aside, set the mechanics aside, set everything else, the combination of story with choices that I feel like have consequences in the tabletop experience is the thing that made me fall in love with Tainted Grail in the first place.
That's fair.
All right.
For sure.
So, Kadeus, I want to take a step back.
Okay.
I'm going to hand the mic over to West. West, what did you expect going into Tainted Grail, and what have you found here so far?
Okay. So, brutal honesty, these types of games are not my favorite types of games. I don't generally enjoy long slogs through books, though I do enjoy world building, and I really enjoy the stories that usually come with them. This is one of the best ones that are out there. However, I wasn't expecting this game to pull me in, and I will say that it did, and that was a good thing. I was kind of expecting it to be a bit more of a slog because of what I'd heard so much about the old Tainted Grail, with how many it's a constant, you've got to get all these different things so that you can keep the mineralite, and then while you're doing that, you're also trying to find all these other pieces, and then you're still going on the quest, but that mineral is coming again, you got to run back over there and fix it. That's what I always heard. Never played it. That was the reason I'd not played it.
It's not untrue.
there was a lot of slog. That's what I've heard. So I was expecting to see some of that again, and there's none of that now, which I think is good. Some people may say they made it easier on people, but I think they made the play experience better because you're actually focusing on the story, the world building, and that kind of thing, rather than the simple minutia of that people were likely skipping past in the first time.
Yeah, and after we finished, I was kind of like poking you a bit.
Yeah.
And you were still like, this is still not me.
Yeah, it's not a game that I would choose, like, I'd pull off the shelf over other things. Like, I know this game's going to be hours and hours and hours of time invested, right?
Yeah.
I would rather play different types of experiences. Give me TI, give me, a giant campaign of Too Many Bones or something. Like, those types of things I have no issues playing. This isn't generally something that I would seek to pull off the shelves. A lot of flipping back and forth in between books, which sometimes can be a little fiddly, but the stories that they tell are really good. But it's just not something that I generally enjoy.
We all acknowledge West is wrong.
It's fair.
We do. We all acknowledge that.
Yeah.
If you're watching the video now, just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We here at the channel, Quackalope, do not stand by or assert anything that
Totally
West
fair.
says.
It's totally fair.
All right, Kadeus, before we get to our first impressions, opinions, and I think we both actually have a bit of glowing positivity because we just love this genre, but also probably some guidelines and some, like, this is what people who are going to be new to this or people that are coming back to this will experience. Because you were already having friends ping you, texting you, being like, hey, is this as good as the original? And you're like, I don't know if you can get the nostalgia of the original, so we'll get there. But what are some of the mechanics, what are some of the elements here that this is doing different from the original? We already mentioned the menhirs. Those are no longer requirements. You don't have to maintain them. There is a resource cost to go ahead and set up new guideposts.
For sure.
But those will actually, for the most part, remain lit, and allow you to expand your search pattern without having to, like, re-interact with them. What else is happening here that's going to be new?
So, mechanically, since the menhirs aren't there, in original Tainted Grail, they were your timer, but they were also the tension and what pushed you forward, right?
Yeah.
Like, whether you kind of pushed forward against the menhir timer to get to that next menhir, to get to the, that next part of the story. And that was kind of your timer. That provided kind of the push in that game. So, in replacement of that, since the Waystones they're not going out on their own right now, we encountered guardian enemies that could take out and eat these Waystones.
Take the magic from them.
Which is pretty detrimental given that...
And it gave us a choice of face them down as a team, or let them take out the Waystone itself.
Yeah.
So we even had some mitigation.
So some choices there, but there is some tension still, but it's provided in a very different way that can be mitigated in a certain sense, right? Also just a mental change as we're playing here, that going into the weirdness is not always a bad thing or even bad at all.
Yeah.
Right? As you're going along, for instance, we might go into the woods and have a clear view of everything going on, see like a horse-drawn trailer that's cracked, broken, there's a bit of goods left. But if we went in the weirdness, maybe we still stumble and find that. So there's not as much of there's still a cost associated with going in the weirdness, but the map's more open. There's more ways to explore, and you don't have to commit to one direction as hard as you did in Tainted Grail. Left or right, east or west on the map. That was a big commitment because you wouldn't have the resources to do that.
To go back.
And here you could kind of explore out a bit more.
Did they still have this mechanic with the cards?
Yes.
Okay, so because that to me still felt like, hey, we've got to get this stuff done.
Yes.
This is the internal timer.
The way the event deck structured, the way all of this was happening is exactly the same as original Tainted Grail. Still providing some of that tension. But Tainted Grail is very good about, since it's more open world, right? It's not, the timer is very long on some things. It's not going to instantly have you fail.
Well, and you haven't even started to see how open world it is. This prologue was us going up one path to get to this hub, where now we can literally go in near any direction. It becomes a bundle of opportunity.
Okay.
So
yeah, but I would say that would really be the big changes, and then just some quality of life changes, resource wise, resting wise, that make the game less grindy. Resources are more focused on, you're going to be paying merchants for things, or you're going to be paying specifically for character abilities, and less about trying to keep your people alive with food, unless you're trying to heal them or make them, feed them so they're less anxious about what's around them.
Now, one of the other elements that they have adapted or changed as well is going to deal with the diplomacy deck.
Yeah.
Instead of having a straight win or loss, like drive it to red or drive it to green, you're actually going to have a time sequence there. So you're going to be interacting with this for 3 stages, 3 cycles, which changes the puzzle a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit more about lengthening it or getting the right moment to be able to speak or talk or interact in the correct way, which is... I don't know if I love that shift in the puzzle yet. I'm still conflicted about how I feel about that, but it is a difference. It does feel different from combat in a more notable way than I think it did in the original.
It is very different because, it was very similar to combat before.
Yep.
And now that we've introduced this duration mechanic, there's ways of playing with, can I just end it now? Can I strive to just end it quickly and, whatever that cost, versus kind of waiting it out and hoping for the best.
So... You're about 4 hours into this. You've prayed through what I would say is the prologue of, Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. Can Kings of Ruin recapture the nostalgia, recapture what Tainted Grail did, and ne'er say, can it do it better?
So I think from a broad stroke, it's never going to be your first Tainted Grail, right? I think the first moment you step in Avalon is always going to be a favorite moment in gaming for me. The first chapter is how the story unfolded, all of that. It's a more focused story than the original Tainted Grail as far as the beginning here. What we're trying to do seems very focused. It definitely is very good. I've enjoyed my experience with it, and I'm interested to see what's happened, how the world has opened up, the things we haven't seen yet. We've only heard all the little spots, little things we couldn't do. We couldn't get the windmill children figured out.
We never searched the kennels. We never did.
There's so many little things that Tainted Grail just tantalizing. How do you get those statuses?
Yeah.
How do you I'm missing 6 options here of things I could have done. And all of them are phenomenal. I think your mileage is going to vary on if it fits that niche. I think if you haven't played Tainted Grail, I think this would be a fine entry into the series.
I would
argue
this is going to be the best entry into the Tainted Grail genre.
Yeah, this has to be more approachable than the original.
The only thing I'll comment on is I know that one of the GameFound updates is there's going to be a 2.0 pack for Tainted Grail for adjustments. And until we see those adjustments, I don't know. They're going to bring that in line a bit more with what they're doing now. So that may reduce some of that
really
grindiness.
Compelling. I still think with the amount of ease of life mechanics here, and almost because the story at the moment feels a little bit more directional with my characters, I still think that this is going to be, for me, the place where I send people. Because it doesn't take away from, it definitely does enhance the gamer experience if you're already familiar with Tainted Grail. There were multiple things that you and I laughed at or really enjoyed because it was paying homage to or revealing more information about that original story. But then on top of that, or adjacent to that, I don't think anyone is going to miss out on this, and I could see people falling in love with this version of the game and going back to play the original.
No.
Right now, my gut check is if someone does a all-in, they back everything. I mean, and I don't know if they're going to have everything available, but let's say they had the original reprint and this available for an astronomical price point. I would advocate for someone to play this initially, then that original game. That's where I am at the moment.
For sure. It's going to be an easier game to get into. For sure. And just experience, right? It's the new version of Tainted Grail.
It feels really good to be back in Tainted Grail. Any of you that are watching the House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, that were burnt to a crisp from what happened on Season 8, I've talked with a lot of people that have kind of had the same expression. Like, it feels good to be back in Game of Thrones. It feels good to be back in this thing that I loved for a season, right? And that's what Tainted Grail was for me. Like, I honestly, it's been a year and a half or so since I sat down and actually go through a campaign and played it. And so there was a lot of stuff I had to remember and fall in love with again. But now I'm right back here. And it's sad to me that West doesn't want to play through 50 hours of a campaign.
Well, yeah, I don't want to pay through 50 hours of a campaign. I'm interested to see what Chapter 2 brings, see when the world opens a little bit more, if that would be even more compelling.
But I'm ready for 50 hours of a campaign. There's a reason I love this game. There's a reason that I think Awakened Realms is a masterclass at what they do. And it's not all their games have been right for me. Not all their games are perfect. This is the one that for me is like the pinnacle of creation from what they've produced.
Do you know what this game needs?
What does it need?
Some take that element. It's like a competitive mode.
Yeah, you fight the other people. You fight the other people. Go play Nemesis. Go play Nemesis, you heathen. That being said, final part of this, and then we'll let you go. By the way, if you're watching right now, we've got 2 gameplays coming out. Hit the subscribe button down below because Kadeus is up past his bedtime by 3 solid hours, maybe 4 solid hours. What time is it right now, Kadeus?
It's 3:30.
Yeah,
you
know how pissed off he is at me. And if you don't subscribe to this video, he's gonna have my balls. I'm telling you. All right. Final thing from all of us, just because I have been hyping this up. I am insanely excited. And whenever I'm there on something, I feel it's due diligence to give the strong caveats and the warning signs. Because for the people that shouldn't get this, I don't want them to get this. Yeah. But then for the people that should, I want them to be as excited as I am about receiving it because it will deliver. Okay, so my strong caveats, and then I'll throw it to you two, and then we can wrap up the video.
Okay.
Some of the strong caveats I have. Combat is still mechanically complex and fairly confusing. It takes a bit to get your feet under you, and playing on camera is not the best way for us to approach that. I find combat is the most rewarding when I'm playing solo and I'm sitting there actually working through this little puzzle myself, lining cards up and fiddling with it for a bit. And fiddling is not the best play experience when you have multiple people around the table. I also think that Tainted Grail is really a solo or 2-player game. I don't really want to journey through with a bunch of people. There's too much happening in the world here. There's too many important decisions that you're making and too much flavor text that you're reading for each personal storyline. And even when it comes to that combat, if I want to mess with the fiddly nature of it, I'm fine if West is looking over my shoulder helping me. I'm not fine if I've got 3 other people or 2 other people that are also doing the same thing. And then on top of that, this is a commitment of a game, a beast of a game. This is what I would consider, for at least probably a 3 to 6 month period of time, a lifestyle sort of game. If you're ordering Tainted Grail, keep a mark on the calendar for when it's going to come in and be prepared to actually table it. Because if you don't get it to a table, leave it set up for a period of time and continue coming back to it, it's going to be hard to get it back off the shelf and revisit it. It's one of the reasons why, it being one of my favorite games of all time, I haven't touched it for a year and a half. It's because the pandemic hit. My gaming group moved. I left. I moved houses and locations multiple times. And it was hard to re-pick back up a campaign.
For sure.
So keep that in mind if you decide to back. Caveat, suggestions, criticisms. What do we got here to damper the excitement a bit?
I think to anybody who played original Tainted Grail and combat and diplomacy, like you were not a fan of the card mechanic, steer clear. It's the same mechanic it was. Like the little diplomacy change will not make it better or worse. Right?
Just different.
It's going to be different. So if that was like your big problem with Tainted Grail, it got old, it got stale, like you just couldn't do that, that's an easy pass, right? You're going to save your money because it's the same mechanic, it's built into the game, it's still going to continue to be the bread and butter this game is built on mechanically. And for people who like it, it's great. For people who don't like how that happens, you saw it in the first one, you don't need to see any more. I think that's pretty clear. And then just in general, it's as far as the fiddliness, I'll definitely reiterate. It's definitely a solo game. There's a lot of text in here. I love it all, but I'm definitely not going to read it all out loud to everyone all the time through everything that's happening. Personally, when I played through Tainted Grail for 100 hours, it was definitely all solo. Solo, two-handed is my favorite way to play, and it's a great time. So.
I was going to echo the reading things out loud. The major thing, if you're not a world-building lore person, this is not the game for you because that is what this thing has in spades. All day long, it is all about lore building. It's about going deep into that style of campaign, which lots of people really love. And I enjoy lore as well, and I think this has some of the most interesting and thematic ones. And I think had it been a solo experience, it may have hit me a little differently. But like I said, there's no take that element for me. So but grand scheme, I think that's the major thing for me. The combat being a little fiddly, and it moving back and forth with the book in multiple people, probably not the biggest thing for me. But the lore was great. The stories were awesome.
No, the stories are always going to be great.
Yeah.
The things you discover are going to be interesting, connected together. They've done so many interesting things with the cards, even pointing out that like the weird side have clues to the non-weird side of what you can and can't find. Even more deep things going on with all of this that they've designed and refined. So if you do enjoy that, if you did enjoy it and everything sounds great and none of the caveats sound like a turnoff here.
It sounds like it's a lot more approachable than the original Tainted Grail. Some may say that dumbs down the experience, but I honestly feel like that can bring more people into it.
They tamed the edges mechanically where it was grindy, and they did not tame the edges mechanically where it was crunchy. Right?
Yep.
It's still just as crunchy as it was. It's just taking the edge
Just a little
off.
less
I need to
grindy.
go hunt here 3 turns in a row to have enough food, and you need to go do wealth so that we can activate this Menhir here.
Yeah. So I would say it's still a heavy game. It's still a rich decision-making game.
Yeah.
I think it is more approachable. I don't think it's any less deep.
Yeah.
The stuff that the community wanted and kind of demanded that Awakened Realms refine when it came to Tainted Grail, when it comes to Etherfields and kind of like, everything that's coming out with that. A lot of it was just the stuff that lengthened and extended unnecessary elements or maintenance of the game. Because everyone was
what I
screaming,
heard.
we love what this puzzle is. I didn't need that.
Yeah.
That's okay, but this is really cool.
Yeah.
So.
No, for sure.
Cool. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We're going to keep diving into this. This is not the last time you're going to see us talking about this. I just thought as we got 4 hours in, we had it set up on the table in front of us. It was a good opportunity to get 3 disparate voices. And Kadeus, leave a comment down below. Daddy Duck drives home a whole 13 hours in about a day.
Yeah.
So,
A day.
I'm glad he's been here, but we don't have long with him, so I will salvage that as much as possible. Thank you for watching, thank you for being here. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. We'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.